Here's again, I'm Dr. Keith Bramwell. I'm director of the hatchery consultants at Jamesway Incubator. Our guest today is Carolina Diaz, who most of you know. She's one of our consultants that does a lot of remote work for us, kind of our go-to. If anybody needs to know something technical about any of our machines, she's got it somewhere in her stuff. So she's going to be a good speaker for us today. We do translate into Spanish, and so for those of you that want to go into Spanish, down at the bottom of your screen, you should have an interpretation button. You can click on there and then pick the Spanish version and hear the rest of this presentation in Spanish. Carolyn, if you want to explain that to them, please.
Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes. Recuerden que como siempre tenemos nuestra traducción simultánea, entonces en la parte de abajo van a encontrar un globo donde tienen la opción de tener la traducción en español. Las preguntas las vamos a hacer al final y las pueden digitar en la cajita de abajo de cuya.
Thank you much. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. Our we have a Q&A box at the bottom, so if you haven't joined us with one of our webinars, we don't do questions live, but you can type your questions at any time during our presentation. When she is finished, we'll address as many of those presentations as we can. We don't get to all of them, but those that we don't get to, we can address later if you have your email and your registration with us. So know that you'll also get an email. Everybody register will get an email from Jamesway that gives you the link to watch this recording in a later time in a PDF if you want it. And so I know a lot of people register with the idea that they're going to watch it later, and that's fine. So you will get that link to watch it later. Okay, so again, Carolina Diaz talking about the importance of egg storage management. She's been with Chickmaster before the merge to Chickmaster Jamesway, and her role now is she's based in Latin America and does some work in Latin America, but also globally. She's a global assistant to all of our consultants as a consultant, and can get in remotely to anybody's computers and help assist in that way. Does a lot of remote trainings as well. So very glad to have Caroline on board with our Jamesway team and also with this webinar. So if you will get rolling with that, and I'll turn off my camera and I'll be back in a little bit. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody, depending where you're at. As Dr. Keith Bramwell just said today, our topic is the importance of the egg storage management. So we're gonna cover mostly about the egg handling and how we, at some points which we'll take care of when working with the eggs. So the topics we're going to cover today, the first one is going to be key points of egg management from the arrival to the set into the incubator. Second one will be how to maintain embryo viability and prolonged egg storage times. And the third topic will be key points and alternatives for proper egg storage management. So let's start with our first topic. All right, so for the incubator, guess what is our raw material? So in the world, there is a different kind of raw materials. Actually, we used most of them like corn, wheat, and whatever. But for the incubator, I'll say that corn and that wheat are already transformed into a fertile egg. This is our raw material, and if we don't have a good quality on our raw material, then we won't have good results. So it is very, very important to keep these eggs safe so that we guarantee that they are first, of course, fertile, and second, that they will keep alive through the process. So I'm gonna go like within different parts of the chain and talking some maybe questions or some recommendations we may take care of. So let's start with the farm management and how does influence on egg quality. So of course we have this chart where it is explained that breeders with good health will give us first the proper amount of eggs they can produce or the maximum amount of eggs they can produce. And The second point will be, of course, the fertile eggs to be fertile. So feed is important for them. As we know, feed has a really good impact on the embryo viability. And this remembers me one story we had with a customer where they, for a couple of reasons, they forgot to put all the vitamin nucleus inside the feed. And guess what? They were having embryos, but they were dying at third week of embryo development. We were trying to chase, problems about the ventilation because they were fully developed and it was finally a feed problem. So we may guarantee that the hens are getting all the nutritional requirements they need. Um, Secondly, we need to guarantee that the nests are clean and disinfected. The trays should also be clean and the worker hands, because when they pick up the eggs, or if it's handmade, or whatever gets in contact with the egg, it gets contaminated through different flocks or different farm breeder houses. Then we are gonna transport those bacteria. So it is very important to have proper sanitation on every place, including hands. Um, Frequent egg collections, we know that it is very important. It varies according to labor. We know where we have actually a lot of labor challenging all around the world, but it is important to have frequent egg collection, especially the first and second ones, where we find the largest amount of eggs. The other one will be selecting the eggs. So there should be like at least two filters. One will be in the farm. So at the farm, of course, we should try not to send all the eggs that had excessive feces, cracks, or deformed eggshells. However, some of them can go by, and then on the hatchery, we should do a cool as well. And then the last one, which is hard to see on the farm, but it depends upon the farm, which is fertility, according to breeder age, of course. On the egg handling in the farm, we should take care about the egg storage area, which should be clean. We should make sure that the cooling equipment is well maintained and operated. So sometimes we find that it is not properly well maintained, and guess what? They get pre-incubated or they get excessive development so that they will just die on the early stages. So eggs should be labeled with flock ID and laying date. And this is very, very important because it has happened that sometimes we forgot to label the laying date and we forget that those group of eggs has just more than what we think they are. The cooling equipment should be in well maintained and operated. Again, it is not all about a set point. We should also know really good our area and see if maybe we should lower the equipment set point or increase it. It is good to measure eggshell temps at the breeder farm egg storage area because it gives us a clue of how is it being operated. And then in case the eggs are disinfected in farm, um, again, they should be done properly. So here we have some examples of disinfectants we can use to disinfect the fertile eggs. They should be disinfected either by spraying or misting. Some of the products that we find in the market could be quaternary ammonium compounds, glutaraldehyde, formaldehyde for poultry use, of course, peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, and some other products such as acid-based solutions. It's a key point to make sure that you're following your disinfectant manufacturer recommendations upon concentrations because that's an important point as well. Remember, there are two things we need to keep in mind. One is cleanness, and the other one will be how disinfected is the egg. So how to apply? You should place the eggs in a clean tray. Second, prepare the solution according to your manufacturer's instruction. Third one, spray in a fine mist covering the eggs but avoiding soaking it. And fourth one, let it dry in a clean environment. And then, of course, let it act. There is another option that is going through the market, and it's the UVC disinfection. It is widely used in some incubators. Basically the eggs pass through tunnels with UVC lamps, and it inactivates the bacteria growth. Um, it should not be applied too close because it can have some impact on the eggshell and on the embryo. And there are some like mixed methods. I heard one that mixed like the UVC with hydrogen peroxide with really good results. So egg transportation, we should do some questions when we talk about fertile egg transportation. First one will be, is the cabinet well sealed? Because sometimes we trust the set point, but again, we don't see how the cabinet is. And this is important to avoid having, I would say, hot and cold spots within the cabinet. Is the truck cabinet previously turned on? Or are we loading the eggs and then turning on the air handler? Remember, we should try to precondition that area so that the air conditioning is not blowing too much cold air on a specific point, so that again it creates micro environments. Is the conditioning um, air working, like is the equipment working properly? Just as a double check, we highly recommend to have data loggers that can be placed inside so we can track how temperature was among the time and during the transportation process. This really helps on, um, um, graphing and going back and see how transportation was. Are the eggs located in an organized pattern by flock and laying date? Again, this is important because we should know what is arriving to our hatchery. And one of the most important points is not just the flock number, it is the laying date as well. So when we send fertile eggs from the farm to the hatchery, we should guarantee that we have like a remission format. This remission format should have the quantity of eggs the truck is transporting, the flock ID, the quantity of eggs per flock in case it has more than one flock, and then the egg laying day per flock. So here are different types of transporting methods. Um, I mean, they can vary according to company, and all of them are valid, I'll say. So, egg reception at the hatchery. We should have a proper reception area, and there are some that just go directly and join the building. I'll say this just, I don't know how to say this word in English, but they just join, the truck joins the building, and it helps on preventing, especially in the tropical area or when we have hot weather, it prevents the eggs from sweating. So it really keeps all the chain of the temperature constant, and it avoids having, I'll say, eggs crying or sweating. Secondly, measure eggshell temps when the truck arrives. It is a double check compared to what the air conditioning in the truck is saying. Uh, and it'll also give us a guide of how the eggshell temperature is looking like and how uniform it is. And the last one, again, focus on the remission. We should guarantee that what we're reviewing or receiving physically match with the format we received, that we have the same amount of eggs and the same inventory. On the egg disinfection, of course, there are people that also do, and we should do a disinfection procedure in the hatchery or at the hatchery. So ensure the solution is prepared properly. Make sure the product covers the egg mass. So we should cover all the egg mass, all the eggs that we're getting inside the incubator, and then take laboratory samples within the areas where the eggs are placed. So at least once a month, take some environmental samples and send them to the laboratory to monitor how is your environment. And it really helps on, like double checking how disinfection is being done. Egg processing. So handle the eggs gently. Remember, they are live. They are not just an object that you can move around and whatever. So they are alive. They are alive. They are babies that are coming. So be gentle with them. Track the egg cools per flock. And especially if you see that your cooling is increasing inside the hatchery, just put your hands up. There might be something happening in the breeder farm, and it can be a clue of how that hatch is going to be possibly. So if you see that certain characteristic is being increased, such as white eggs, um, um, you should again raise your hand because it can be like a disease going on with the breeders, or if you see a lot of cracks, again, double check with nutrition and a couple of other factors. Um, Check your cool cows, and then if you have automated methods, make sure your equipment is well maintained. Something that some hatcheries do have really, really well organized is to have a cool eggs disposal area. Um, this again prevents of getting confused about which eggs um, are proper to incubate and which eggs aren't. Um, and again, this should be like in a special area where we put all the cool eggs and that disposal area. On the egg storage, oh, I'm sorry. On the egg storage, keep the egg storage organized and clean. Make sure the cooling equipment is properly sized according to the area you have. Make sure your sensors are properly calibrated and maintained. Store the eggs on containers that will allow proper ventilation. So, for example, we've seen some cases where they store the eggs in cardboard. Um, some reasons are because the eggs are so big. But again, this is something that can be done in the practical, but it doesn't mean that it's ideal, right? So we should sometimes control our feeding on the breeders to control the egg size and try to work with that. And then, do you have your inventory updated? We have like really nice software. I'm sure some of you maybe have heard of it. If not, it is a software that will help tracking all the inventories by flock, by laying date, and this is very, very important to warranty good results, of course. So egg room example. Here we have a really nice egg room. I really like this egg room when I was at this hatchery. As you can see, they have labeled everything. They have clean tables to work with. They have the garbage to put all the broken eggs and all the byproducts. All the eggs are stored in trolleys so that airflow goes really, 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 really nice and uniform. They have disinfection wipes here for the personnel to clean their hands. Meanwhile, they change, flock, or whatever. So I really like this example because I think it's a really neat egg storage room, an egg processing room. Warm up. I'll say the most important rule of thumb is that your warm up or pre-warm system should be as uniform as possible. It could be a really good practice and help the incubator not to struggle much on the multi-stage side when the eggs are placed inside the incubator, especially on the classic side. But if we don't do it properly and we don't guarantee that the temperatures among the egg mass are really or very, very similar, then it can just result on a wide hatch window. So it will help or shortening our hatch window if we have it uniform. So remember, all about hatch window, one of the most important points to take care of is having temperature consistency among the process. It is not just the incubator or the hatcher. It is within the process, and a hatch window can start since I'll say since the egg is laid, or since the group of eggs are laid. So here we have a chart that is very, very, very popular, but I think it's really, really useful in terms of egg handling. So here we have our hen's body temperature, which should be around 40 to 41 centigrades. Then we have our hen house. We should start decreasing temperature, so around 24 to 29, it's our normal. Then on the on-farm egg room, we should decrease it from 21 to 25. And the transportation truck should also decrease to 2023 centigrades. And at the end, we should end with the hatchery egg room. Um, it is very, very, I think the most important thing is just to keep dropping temperature on the egg mass. That is the clue. It's not following these set points. I'll say again, don't be afraid of measuring eggshell within the process and guaranteeing a temperature drop on the chain. On the exit, we should make sure that the bearings of your trolleys are in good conditions. Other way, we can have cracks, and again have some problems when doing the setting. So bearings is very, very important on the trolleys. Make sure your egg trays are in good shape, because sometimes we find that they are broken, they are not replaced, and then again it promotes some egg damage. Um, Make sure you're selecting your profile according to the egg pack characteristics. And of course, make sure too that you are setting at the proper time. So for instance, if you have eggs that are being um, stored for longer than 7 days, you may want to set them a couple of hours before you normal do, just to give them more incubation time and to try to decrease the live pips. So again, make sure you're setting at the proper time and you project your pulling time so you can protect your pulling time. Make sure you're doing a pre-check list for the incubator so that you guarantee that the machine is going to do what you think it should do. Um, if we don't make sure that the incubator is in proper conditions, then we can have the cases where we may pull the eggs out, change incubator, and all that logistics just struggle on the egg pack conditions initially. So let's make sure the incubators are working properly, and the only way to do that, or at least to try to avoid having those cases where we need to move the eggs, is doing a proper checklist to make sure everything is working properly on the incubator. All right, let's go to the second topic, which is how to maintain embryo viability on prolonged egg storage times. I've seen recently a couple of customers here where they have been some prolonged egg storage times. So who may need more treatments, or who challenges more with the high egg storage times? I'll say the question will be who incubates the largest volume of eggs? And then we have, of course, broilers, which is the ones that I'll say they set more frequent. Then we have the layers. And at the last point of the pyramid, we have the genetic lines, right? So we can say that the most likely to need heat treatment will be the genetic line, hatcheries, then the layers, and at the end the broilers. But it doesn't matter that it doesn't mean that the broilers will not need it. Everybody needs it in a certain point. Everybody challenged with more than 7 days of storage. So it should be implemented, or we should implement things to avoid having the negative impact of storage eggs, because sometimes we have reduction in sales, Sometimes we could have oversupply of chickens. The market needs lower flow and less frequent deliveries of poultry. And then, of course, the genetic or layer companies or hatcheries. So what basically happens during high egg storage times is that the pH changes. So here are a couple of factors that promotes that pH change. So longer storage time, it means that we're gonna deplete more CO2 and water loss, so it will increase the pH. If we have higher storage temperature, it speeds up that CO2 evaporation and water evaporation. And if we have low humidity, it means the same. We're gonna dehydrate the eggs faster, affecting some protein structures. And this is the main reason why we have some negative impacts on it. So let's imagine we have a pH of 7.6, we have viable cells, and once that water and CO2 starts evaporating from the egg, the pH will increase. And then the cells inside the blastoderm will start dying. So guess what? These eggs that had a longer storage time are gonna start the race of development far away from the start point. And that's what really happens when we set a group of eggs that have more than 7. Usually, we will not have them, all of them, with 10 days of egg storage. We have a range. So it will be from 8 to 12 days of egg storage. That is our range. So guess what? The ones that have 12 days of egg storage will be near the start point of the race. Meanwhile, the ones that have 8 days of storage or 7 days or less days, they will be more near to the start point of the race. And that results on a really long hatch window because some of them are going to hatch first compared to the other ones. So again, how pH affects embryo development. So first, the embryo survival. So high pH weakness protective layers, increasing early mortality. Chick quality, because it has poor buffering, so weaker embryos and chicks. And hatch synchrony, we already talked about it, but pH is related with the development delays, and they will, again, have a consequence of an uneven hatch. And a point that is very, very important in terms of development is the enzyme activity. So many enzymes are critical to development, are pH sensitive. So pH, if we have a high pH on the egg, then those enzymes are gonna reduce their activity and function. So they are like nutritional enzymes, like lipase or phosphatase or whatever, all the enzymes that we can have on we need for the embryo to develop will have a negative impact. So here we have a graph where we have the loss of hatchability during storage with heat treatment and another one with not heat treatment. So this one did not have treatment, and this one did have treatment. So we have, of course, more loss on the ones that didn't have any heat treatment, right? I'll say heat treatment is the most effective method to minimize the egg storage, the prolonged egg storage timing effects. So the third one, some key points and alternatives we have for proper egg storage management. So what can we do? We already know that the high egg storage timing affects the hatchery because I'll say it decreases hatchability, increases embryo mortality, increases also contamination, and yeah, it affects all around the results. So some methods or some practices we can do is cooling the storage, the egg storage. And sorry, here I put on one extra, but we should have decreased the temperature of the egg room between 14 to 16 centigrades, it will slow down the CO2 loss and the pH raises. We can increase humidity to try to keep it inside the egg, so it preserves moisture inside the egg structure. We, of course, I'll say, use within the eggs. It will prevent excessive alkalinity. Heat treatment, is the most effective one, and avoid storing old eggs. So all our eggs have higher pH and also have thinner eggshell, which allows the water to evaporate faster. And that's the reason this is something I want to mention here is when we have high egg storage times, it is normal to have more moisture loss. Because again, we already lost some moisture on the egg storage, meanwhile they were stored. Here we have a chart. This is a really common chart where depending on the amount of time the timing we're gonna store the eggs, we should lower the temperature and then humidity should be increased. But this is something that we can do in case we have the cooling capacity properly sized to decrease this temperature until 12 centigrades or 54 Fahrenheit when we have more than 12 days of egg storage. One alternative is to turn the eggs in the egg room. So it should be done 2 to 4 times a day during storage, and it will help on the albumin distribution to protect all the embryo and also avoids membranes adhering that will influence on the embryo development. So some hatcheries, they do implement turning on the egg storage room, and it has good results. I'll say relatively good. The second one is to prevent water evaporations. Eggs can be inverted, but this is very high labor demanding because then you need to invert the eggs again, as we know. Or the other one is covering them with plastic material. Again, this will prevent water evaporation. And remember, the eggs have more pores where the air cell is located. So this is the place where we uh, experience more water loss. And that's the reason why inverting the eggs was one method or one alternative that can be done. However, it is not practical at all. Where can you do your heat treatment? You can do it on a regular incubator, but usually when you do it on a regular incubator, which you should move the eggs to the incubator, and then the procedure is just to increase temperature around 32 to 34 centigrades and then drop the temperature. And it is when you do it with a machine that is not designed for it, then you need to move the eggs from the egg room to the incubator, increase temperature, and then take them back to the egg room. So it requires more effort because the eggs must be transferred from the incubator to the cold room. Depending on the volume of eggs, they can create a hot mass in the cold room, which is, again, not nice. And it has an impact on the other egg bags. So an alternative is to have a specialized equipment for performing the heat treatment. It will allow increasing and decreasing temperature within the same area, so you don't need to take the eggs back to the egg room. And of course, it will not affect the thermal load of the cold room. So here is an example of this machine. There are specialized machines to do this. So you can do it during the storage again. The method is to raise the temperature within 32 to 35 centigrades or 90 to 95 Fahrenheit and holding the temperature for 3 to 6 hours and then take them back to neck room temperature. So around 15 to 20 centigrades. It decreases embryo mortality, and of course it will be traduced into hatchability increasement. So improves hatchability, improves chick cooling rates, decrease early embryonic mortality, and reduces incubation time. It doesn't matter what type of equipment you use to increase temperature. if it's your regular incubator or you have a machine that is designed for this treatment. Maintenance, calibration, and monitoring is the clue. So every machine should have a maintenance program. We should calibrate it frequently and make sure that what we're seeing is the reality, and then monitor how it performs. This is the clue. It doesn't matter what type of equipment you use to do this method. Additional consideration, actual temperatures must reach between, again, 32 centigrades and should be maintained at that temperature for 2 to 4 hours. Um, the total time, the actual temperatures have been between 90 to 101 Fahrenheit, which is again 32 to 38 centigrades, will not exceed 12 hours. If we add different treatments, so if we do one that took 4 hours, the other one at 4 days after will be 8 hours, and if we do a third treatment, we should not do a fourth treatment. So the decision of when to do it is very important, and it should be done based on your projections. Um, do not treat eggs that will be loaded within 24 hours, so you should have them at least 24 hours back in egg room temperatures. Um, if you do a heat treatment before 5 days of egg storage, it will not have a really impact about, it will not affect, but it will not give us like a good result. So it will just don't do anything. Here is some practical advice on um, the procedure. So let's have an example that we're gonna store the eggs for 10 days. You can do just one heat treatment. So the heat treatment will be given between the 5 to 6 days of storage. If you're going to store the eggs for 15 days, then you can do two treatments. One can be done between days 5 to 6, and the other one can be done by day 10 to 12. And if you are going to have the eggs stored for 21 days, then you can do 2 to 3 treatments. So one will be between 5 to 6 days. The other one should be repeated at day 10 to 12. And the last one can be done between 15 to 18 days of storage. So procedures. The eggs should be placed in incubator trays and incubator trolleys. The temperature can be raised in the incubators on machine designs for this purpose. If you're using incubators, keep in mind that you must calculate how many eggs the incubator can hold, and how long does the incubator take to increase that temperature. Um, if you, I mean, you should, if you're doing it, I'll say if you're doing it in a multi-stage machine, then you should keep, measuring actual temps to make sure that it is already at set point. And once it is at set point, you should hold it for 4 hours. Um, and try to make sure that all of the eggs reach the target set point at temperature. So the first treatment can usually is given by day 5 to 6, and then repeated into each 4 to 5 days. As soon as the eggs get or reach the 32 centigrades, they should be cooled uniformly as quickly as possible. So for some single stage equipment, then you can lower your set point and to cool them out down a little bit, and then take the eggs to the egg storage room, so that you don't create that hot spot on your egg storage room. So single stage equipment really helps on that and does a really good job. If we have multi-stage equipment, they can cool down a little bit the temperature, but they don't get to 24 centigrades. Um, if heat treatment process becomes a regular or a frequent practice, then you can divide your egg rooms to not affect the whole egg room, and have a separate egg room or cold room to continue lowering your temperature. So having different egg storage rooms facilitates this practice. Here is an example of a heat treatment inside a machine that is equipped for there. So here we will have our storage temperature around 18 centigrades. Once we put the eggs inside the incubator, we will have a pre-warm or a warm-up phase where we will increase the actual temperature around 35 centigrades. Spiders has a positive impact since 32 centigrades. That's the reason why we have this line here, because it will just start reacting since here to the here. Then we will hold them to the treatment phase, which will be again between 2 to 4 hours. And then we should drop temperature as soon as possible. So cooling phase will occur. And after that, we can take them to storage for other 4 days and set them into the incubator or repeat the treatment. So basically what heat treatment does on during egg storage is multiplying cells. So once we have here, we already saw that the cell viability will decrease among time. So what we will do by increasing temperature is just multiplying cell multiplication. So that I'll say like recuperate the cells that have already died during the storage. So we will multiply those cells so that the embryo, when it starts its development, will not be lacking of viable cells. Here is just an example of a treatment. We started at day 0. We increased temperature to 99 Fahrenheit and the humidity at 75 with the damper fully closed. And then once we have a couple of hours, we need to decrease temperature set point and open our damper to facilitate decreasing the temperature. So we will use, of course, chilled water, but then we can also help the machine cool down by opening the damper. And then here is an example of a customer, a really close customer. Whom did like a trial, and I will say it was not a trial because they continued doing this heat treatment for years, and actually I think they currently do it when they need it. So they use one machine for this trial. They use one machine with this amount of eggs. The eggs were stored for 2 to 6 days at the start of the treatment. Heating was performed to um, to 75 Fahrenheit for 1 hour just to try to uniformize the egg mass, and then the temperature was increased for 2 to 4 hours to reach the 97.5 Fahrenheit, and then they did the cooling. So they use different flux sources, one from 33 weeks, the other one for 32 weeks, and the other one for 29 weeks. They use really young flux. And then what they did is that they set some eggs that had 13 to 14 days of storage. So they had like a control and a stored group of eggs. They added some data loggers on the incubators on the trays to monitor how temperature went up and at which temperature did they target. And they did 2 cycles of treatment for these ones. So these ones one trolley and these ones this one was the other trolley. So they monitored the enough injected eggs. So basically we can see the the one that was like the control and the heat treated eggs. So they did both, and as we can see, there was a significant increasement between all the flocks. So they have 4 different flocks, and all of them had a significant increasement in terms of injected eggs on the inovo, which means more viable eggs. Then they monitored to the hatch fertile. So on hydroferrol, there was also a really, really good results in terms of difference between the control and the distorted eggs, or the treated eggs, I would say, the treated eggs with the heat treatment. So it was consistently having a really large difference, around like 4 points here, 2 points here, 3 points here, and again, 3 points on this block. Here are the values of total hatch. So again, for the different flocks, they did have a significant impact on the heat treated versus the non-treated eggs. Um, as it resulted on more saleable chicks. And that's what we had for today.
Thank you so much. Nice presentation, good information in there.
Okay.
So you can stop sharing. Or are you trying to figure out how to do that? There we go. All right. Thank you again. A lot of good information there. I'm taking notes myself on that. So um, several questions here. Some of them you covered in there, but maybe you can just kind of touch on it again. Um, what about floor eggs and hatchability, and how do you handle those?
That's a really good question. Um, I will say it's impossible not to set the floor eggs because they are still morning. We know they will get higher contamination values, so they don't hatch as well as the, I'll say, first class or prime, I'll say like good quality eggs. Some recommendations are floor eggs should be labeled. They should be set separately, and they should be set and transferred at the bottom of the incubator and the hatcher so that in case they explode, we don't have contamination within the whole uh, rack. We also have some customers where they just, instead of putting them at the bottom, depending on how the machine airflow is, they put like a separate trolley, and all that trolley will have all the floor eggs. But I will say the most important point, or the key point, is to label them. In case you need to set them, label them.
Right. Right. Yeah, I see a lot of people using them, but it's important to kind of figure out how you're going to use them. If you're short on eggs, people are using them for
Yeah.
sure. What about in the transportation, actually, like the transportation vehicle, the trucks? I mean, is there somebody'd asked if there's a speed time duration, but I know people ship eggs all over the place. But what is your thoughts on transport and how that is, the smoothness of it, how we handle it during how much can that have an effect on hatchability, how they're handled? Because sometimes it's a short time, sometimes it's a long time.
Yeah. The clue is to keep temperature. I will say it doesn't matter how long it takes to transport the eggs from the farm to the hatchery, because we know, for example, there are customers that they buy eggs from different countries. So the clue is to try to keep that temperature as consistent as you can and as constant as it can. Um, that will be the most important point during transportation. If not, sometimes what you see, like you face different kind of things. We were lacking when I worked in a hatchery, we were lacking of eggs, and we were just basically waiting for the hen to put the eggs. So we used the truck to warm up the eggs and not cool them at all. They were just like a couple of hours in the egg storage room of the breeder farm to cool them down, but just for a couple of hours. We were lacking of eggs. So it is not ideal. We saw that it did have a negative impact on hatchability. It could drop around 1% of this expected hatchability. But I'll say maybe consistency is the clue. If you can have data lawyer, that is the best tool we can use. And then if something happens, or you're just thinking on something, you can go back and see how was it.
You brought up pre-warming eggs. What are your thoughts on that? I know with single stage, you can pre-warm in the machine, and they're designed to do that, and that's fine. But if you've got like multi-stage, and you're wanting to pre-warm, what are your thoughts on pre-warming eggs and how to do it?
It works really good. It depends upon the type of machine.
It
And I will
works good
say,
if it's done right. That's my
yeah,
summary of it, right? But go ahead.
yeah. And then so you may need to guarantee uniformity is achieved. Um, there are people who increase the temperature around 28 to 34 centigrades. And basically that's what it's done. Just take the eggs to the pre-warm room, set the temperature to 32 or 34 centigrades, and then it is important to how long does it take to increase the temperature. So there are people who leave them for 6 hours, 8 hours. It depends on the capability of the equipment you have on site to warm them up.
And making sure it's uniform. The times
Yeah,
I've seen it not work is when they pre-warm, but they have them all packed together so tight that they don't get good airflow through them, and so yeah. So can you briefly go over, because there's several questions about this that is explained on that V chart, about what the ideal temperature is for the farm and for the egg truck, and the ones asking about egg storage for 4 to 5 days. Can you briefly go over that flow of temperatures? Because a lot of it is not exact as maintaining that flow, correct?
yeah. I will say again, measure your actual temps within the process and adjust your set points on the areas according to the actual temps you're reading. Because sometimes we have um that the truck is not cooling enough, for example. So it is warmer than the I'll say the on-farm egg room. So the clue is try to keep dropping down the temperature. So for instance, if you
Right,
have
right.
your hen house within 24 to 29 centigrades, then the temperature on the farm egg room should be lower than that. And then depending on how long does the truck takes, of course, to take them to the hatchery, then that temperature should continue decreasing around 20 to 23 centigrades. And then our latest temperature in the egg room should be around 15 to 20 centigrades to keep lowering the temperature. So that will
And
be
and
like,
that's the Yeah, and that's the important thing is, I've been asked many times, what's the exact temperature? It's making sure that you're continually going lower in your next temperature from what your farm egg room to your egg truck to your hatchery. And I've been asked why we don't have it all the same, because I don't believe people can have three separate places have the same temperature. So we just have it lower. So I would say to add to that is request this presentation and get that chart and look at that chart, and there's ranges on it, and make sure you're falling within that. And it's not necessarily an exact temperature as it is that flow, and making sure we're hitting the same things there. So
yeah.
um okay, some of them are dealing with the same thing here. Um what about Spideys, when you're talking about Spideys, and how many times can you do that? And I mean, where say you got a really long, like a 25-day egg storage, I mean, how many times is maximum we can do Spidey's treatments? And when should we start?
Okay, so there was a really nice slide we had there where we have 3 times. It can be done 3 times. If you're having 24 days, instead of doing at the day 5 or 6, I will start doing it at say at day 7, 8. Then the other one can be done at day around day 12. And then the other one could be done at day 16, 17, and then after that, after those 4 or 5 days, you can set the eggs. So that is the basics, but you can start moving days as you project the egg setting time.
And so what would be when you're talking about this, you kind of covered that when to start it and how many times you can do that. And I believe you said in your presentation before 5 days doesn't really uh, make a much of a difference, and we've seen that as well. But so when would they start? I mean, how long in egg stores before you feel like you need to do Spideys?
When you have more than 7 days, when you expect to have them stored for more than 7 days. So it will have an impact if you do it, let's say at day 5 and you're projecting them to be set at day 8 or day 9, then you can do it at day 5th or 6th.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a few people try to do that earlier, but yeah, as you described in there, you're repairing cell damage, and if you don't have cell damage before day 5, or you don't have enough of it, you're really not going to see a huge
Yeah.
difference in there. If somebody is not going to do Spideys and they're storing eggs up till 10 days, what is the temperature? Is there a temperature range you should do in your hatchery egg room? So if all of your eggs are going to be under 10 days, what would be the ideal range? Take into consideration that we've got our step down from our farm to our truck to our hatchery itself, and we don't have long-term storage. What's our ideal storage there?
On the egg room?
Yeah,
Is that what
hatchery egg room.
Okay, so you should decrease the temperature on the egg room around, let me go back to my chart because I don't have it in mind, but if you have them from 10 to 12 days, then you can decrease temperature to 12 to 15 centigrades. And then if you can increase humidity, you can increase humidity to 75 to 80%.
Okay. What have you seen on the use of UV light for disinfection? I know you talked about it a little, I believe you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah,
The
basically,
effectiveness of how many people are using it?
well, how many people? I don't have like a
I mean, I
number.
mean, I mean, not exactly, but is it very common?
At least here in Latin America, I don't see it super common. Where I see it most common is in places where they have all um, like automated, and there is the machine where part of the models they have is a place where the UV goes over the egg tray. Um, but when the process is done by hand, I haven't seen it's very often. I will say it will be more often when we have all automated,
Okay.
fully automated, where there is a model for
What
that.
about covering the eggs during with plastic during storage? Particularly, I see people that are going to ship eggs a lot of times, not always, but sometimes they'll put plastic wrapper. Does that affect the gas exchange? And how long is that okay to be wrapped up like that?
I mean, when the embryo is on the early stages, it doesn't need much gas exchange. So basically, we don't need much air, and that's the reason why also we keep the damper closed. They are not producing a lot of CO2 because they are not requiring too much oxygen. Um, but there are people who they just leave it with the plastic things when they are gonna start it for longer than 7 days. And it will avoid
Okay,
evaporation, water, and CO2 depletion.
what about humidity levels and how important is to manage humidity in when we're doing storage? I mean, what is kind of the purpose of that?
The
How do we
purpose of that is,
manage it?
yeah, try to prevent having evaporation of water from the inner of the egg to the outside. So increasing humidity on the environment will help that humidity to keep inside the eggs and not being evaporated, which will help us on the pH change as we talked. So basically, it will help on having all the pH balance for all the development on the enzymes and on the protein structures. So increasing humidity basically helps us on avoiding water evaporation.
And just if we look at the laws of thermodynamics and moisture, when your temperature is cool, the saturation point is pretty high in there. And a lot of this work I did with egg storage and stuff, I didn't see we don't see a lot of moisture loss. And so humidity of 5% difference one way or another, if you're already up in the range you should be, I didn't see it having much of an effect on moisture loss. However, I do know some people really are very particular about that, but yeah. Um, what about specific gravity? Does that have anything? I know some people test that. Does that affect egg quality and hatchability, you think, if people are looking at eggshell quality with specific gravity?
Yeah, it is a practice that is done, but again, if you have stored eggs, then that specific gravity will not be, I'll say, significant because again, your water will be evaporated, that your aerosol is gonna be faster and they will float faster than the others. Um, so it's an actual measurement, but it is, I would say it's more like a air cell size measurement instead of the actual characteristic. It is used as to measure actual characteristics, but it is not. I will say if you have the egg storage for longer than 7 days, then that is not a good measurement because you won't have
Yeah,
real data. It won't measure the
yeah.
actual quality, it will measure more timing.
Okay. Um, there's several other questions that are a little bit more specific than we want to cover here. So I just want to let people know if you've asked questions on here and we haven't covered them, we'll get with you in an email if you're, of course, if you register, I'm just say this, if you're registered as an anonymous user and we don't get your question, we can't respond back because we don't have an email. But if you're registered with an email and you ask a question here we didn't get to, then we'll get to that for you and address that. Some of them are just more specific than we want to cover here. Some we need a little bit more details. So um, anyway, with that, thank you so much for the webinar. A lot of interesting discussion, a lot of comments. We'll have fun going through some of our written questions here. Covers a lot of different topics. If any of you look at the chat box. So, but thank you, Carolina, so much for your presentation, what you did. Everybody, again, you will get an email on this, and probably tomorrow, in the next 2 days for sure, with a link to watch it later and to get a PDF. Had several people ask if they can get a PDF of this to look at it later. Yes, you can. You'll get an email with a link to the recording and the ability to get the PDF as well. So just to answer that once again. But thank you again, and thank you all for attending us, and hope you all have a good rest of your year, and we will see you back in January for our next version of Webinar Wednesday 2026. Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank
Carolina.
you. Thank you, Dr. Kate. Bye.